Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Cup of Joe Show. I'm your host, of course, Joe. And today I'm really excited to have my friend Klaus V. Klaus is a good man who's truly embraced recovery and the steps in his life. Sober since October 28th, 2023. Klaus grew up between the Gulf Coast of Texas and Middle Tennessee, and he brings that mix of grit and heart into everything he does. A former IT project manager, Klaus has spent the past couple of years rebuilding his life with purpose and humility. When he's not deep in recovery work, you'll find him kicking back with some classic films or laughing along with Bob's Burgers and other smart adult animation. Klaus's story is about transformation, authenticity, and finding joy in the simple things that make life meaningful. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's get into it. Hey, Klaus, how you doing today?
Hey, Joe, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you, my friend.
Well, thank you for asking me. It's an honor.
So, what was it like growing up, Klaus?
It was weird. My parents divorced when I was 9 because my father came home to find my mother in bed with another woman. And my mother moved us to a little town in Texas so that she could be an out loud and proud lesbian. So this contributed to a sense I already had that I was different. I grew up feeling very different and very separate and apart from. And there was, in terms of that, there was certainly good reason for that. My childhood, I'm a very shy person. I didn't grow up with a lot of friends. My sister was the outgoing, gregarious one. And I just kind of followed along.
Was there was there any alcohol or anything like that growing up?
Yes.
That you noticed, Klaus?
Yes, my father was a violent alcoholic. He would beat my mother, which was why they ended up getting divorced, really. I think they would have, even if that weren't a factor, but my mother had had enough. And then he was sober for various periods of time after that. He died sober in 2000. But there was definitely alcohol around, and I swore that I would never be like my father, which is very ironic. Because I turned out to be, I wasn't a violent drunk, but I turned out to be more like my father than I could possibly have imagined.
Do you remember when was the first time you felt the effects of alcohol? Do you remember that?
The first time I felt the effects of alcohol on me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, my mother left me standing on a street corner to fend for myself when I was 15, and I became a ward of the state of Texas. And I ended up in a children's home. And it was there that I had my first drink. Some of the counselors took me to a bar at the ripe old age of 15. I guess ID was not quite so important in those halcyon days of yesteryear. But I remember drinking to excess. I remember enjoying it, and then way overshooting the mark and ending up on the floor of the toilet making myself vomit, saying to myself, you're going to have to learn how to do this the right way. Because I did love it. I felt, and a big part of what I loved about it is I felt a part of for the first time. Yeah, so that was the first time that I had alcohol. And then, of course, there was also marijuana at the party. The first time I ever smoked a joint was in the children's home. So I was primed for it.
Well, and that, I can imagine, that there's a lot of traumatic stuff happening, and then not feeling like you're fitting in. I know that feeling of, feeling alone in a room full of people, even as a kid, you know, um, and then discovering, hey, I called alcohol the great equalizer, in my life, you know.
Right,
Um,
right. I can identify with that. Yeah,
yeah.
it certainly was for me. You know, I felt like I felt a part of things. I felt some camaraderie for the first time ever. Because, like I said, I really had grown up feeling very separate and apart from, and very weird. Like nobody could understand me, and um, like I guess I felt also in a way like I didn't deserve human companionship, and that changed when I drank.
And so you're 15, and then what happens? How long did you stay in that children's home?
So um, I stayed in the children's home a couple of times. One of the boys was caught molesting some of the other boys, and I decided to get out of there. And I went to live with my father, which was a terrible mistake because he had started drinking again. So I hitchhiked back to Texas from Tennessee, and I ended up becoming an emancipated minor. Well, I ended up doing that, but I stayed at the children's home while that was in process. And my senior year of high school, I lived in a $25 a week room with a shared bathroom down the hall with holes in the wall big enough to crawl into, and an alcoholic next door neighbor who turned tricks for her bottles. And that was my senior year of high school. Um, and alcohol was very much a part of that. There was never a time after my first drink that alcohol wasn't a big part of things until I got sober the first time.
So wow. When what after when you graduated high school, and then did you go, where did you go after high school, Klaus?
So I graduated from high school, and for a year and a half I did nothing, and out of sheer desperation I applied to the University of Southern California, and much to my surprise they accepted me. And so with nothing but a letter of acceptance from USC in my pocket, I headed to California. I flew to California from Texas, and uh, it all just kind of fell into place. I arrived and was told, okay, well, you should probably start at the financial aid table in Bovard Auditorium. So I went to financial aid. Oh, well, here's your offer letter. I guess it crossed you in the mail. And it turned out that I had work study, and I had a university scholarship for academic excellence that paid for my tuition. And I had a full aid package, and I couldn't believe it. But I'll tell you, that period of time in my life drugs took over. Alcohol wasn't the main focus because the legal drinking age in California was 21 and I wasn't 21 yet. And it was easy for me to get hold of any drug known to man, but not so easy for me to get hold of alcohol. And my drinking and drug taking accelerated to the point that I got sober the first time when I was 21. And
what brought you to, like, how did you get into, did you do 12-step recovery, or did you go get some other way?
I did 12-step recovery. I went to a 12-step program. I didn't go through treatment or any of that. I've never been to treatment. I just went to meetings, and it was LA in the 80s, and meetings were very fun to go to. There were a lot of personalities. It was not, I thought that I was going to be consigned to a life of gloom and doom, and it turned out not to be that way. But having said that, the meetings that I went to, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous was the most talked about and least read book. There really wasn't a whole lot of what I would call by the book recovery. And I was looking for that, and I finally did find it after a couple of years. So I stayed sober for, I don't know, 13 years, 12 years, something like that. And what happened is I got a job, and my first real career job, and work became more important. And I stopped going to meetings, and I stopped calling people. And, I was in New York, and it was New Year's Eve, and why not? I drank again for, I guess around 3 years. 3 years was all it took before I was back at that state of pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization, being sick and tired of being sick and tired, and all of the other cliches, which are cliches because they're true. So I got sober again, went to a 12-step program, found a sponsor pretty quickly, was part of a group that very definitely works the steps out of the book. And, started to rebuild my life again. And then the same thing happened. I came in broke and unemployable. And what happened is I got a job back, and work became more important. And then I tried, I'm the king of the geographic cure, by the way. As an adult, I've lived in Los Angeles, Cincinnati, Houston, Austin, New York, San Francisco, Denver, and the list goes on from there. I don't want to bore you with the entire list, but I mean, I moved pretty much every year to year and a half for a very long time. Yeah.
Were you always were you moving for, I'm sure some of it was it all like alcohol, drug related? Like, I got to get out of here. I just burned this city down. I got to go. Or was it some yes, some no?
I would say there was a little bit of that, but mostly it was, yeah, I guess it was, I burned the city down, but it was more really, I'm not getting the sense of ease and comfort here that that I want. And so I'm going to try moving to another place, because obviously the place is the problem. Couldn't be me, had to be the place. So I would just find a job in the new place and find an apartment and move. Looking back, I can't believe that I did that. I can't believe that I had the chutzpah to do that. I mean, I moved. I even moved overseas at one point, which was good. Except that there I was, and I was sober when I lived overseas. I wasn't drinking. That was the second time I was sober. The second time I was sober from about 2002 to about 2014, 2015. And I had gone through, again, the job became more important. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped calling people. I started smoking weed. I figured I'd get on the marijuana maintenance program, and that was fine, that weed wouldn't impact me. If I could just keep it to weed, I'd be fine. And then, of course, I got mighty thirsty while I was smoking. And so that went the way of the dodo, and I drank again. And this time I've been sober for almost 2 years.
So you've had long stretches of sobriety, long stretches, and then yeah, because that's amazing. And I think it's I appreciate what you said. Stop going to meetings, stop doing the things that um, we were supposed to do, put other things as my priority, and then it's cutting, baffling, and powerful. There we go again. So what was the turning point this time for you? Like, what got you back into the rooms this time?
Well, this time I was living in my sister's house. Well, actually, I was living in a house that my mother owned that she didn't even know I was living in, which my sister was also living in. And my sister had a paranoid schizophrenic boyfriend with access to firearms who had fixated on me. And all I was doing was sitting around all day, every day, getting high and drinking. And I promised myself every day I wouldn't do that. Well, I promised myself every day that I wouldn't drink. I figured there was nothing wrong with getting high. P.S. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about that. There was something very wrong about it because, like I said, I get mighty thirsty when I'm smoking. And to me, I can't do the one without it leading to the other. But I just kind of woke up one day and thought, it's just going to be this way every day until I die, and I don't want to live like this anymore. And so I found myself at an AA meeting, high as a kite. I was so high that first meeting, I can't even tell you. And people, I'm sure people knew it. I'm sure people knew it. But everybody welcomed me in anyway.
My old sponsor, Mike, used to say, well, we work with wet drunks too.
Yeah, well, I definitely wasn't dry yet. So I quit alcohol that day, but it took me another week to quit smoking. So I count my sobriety date as October 28th because that's when I quit everything.
What was the hardest part early on about getting sober this time?
That's an interesting question. There were a lot of things that were hard about it. I suppose I moved out of my sister's house because I really wasn't too keen on living there with a paranoid schizophrenic with access to a firearm. I didn't want to end up dead, and I was afraid that that was what was going to happen. So I moved into a halfway house. And I would say being at that halfway house was among the most difficult things. But I think over and above that, it was the fear, just the constant fear, the constant terror that I was going to be homeless, that it doesn't matter what it was about. It was just there all the time. And now it's not.
So, and I want to kind of going back to when you went back out, because I forgot that I wanted to ask you, did anyone try to intervene? Did anyone while you were out, did anyone kind of, recognize that, hey man, you've got a problem anytime during those stretches when you were back out?
No one. I think I might have been pretty good at hiding it. I'm not sure. But on the other hand, I have led a very solitary life. There really wasn't anybody close enough to me to tell me this is out of hand, this is a problem. I've never been able to sustain a relationship, so I didn't have a partner there telling me this is unacceptable, or this has gotten out of hand, or you have a problem. There really wasn't anybody that close to me.
So, so how has, I guess, kind of relapsing and recovering, how has your view of your sobriety and I guess addiction, how has your view changed now in recovery, and what's different about it from before?
That's a good question too. Well, I think the fact that it's a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition is very much a part of my thinking, whereas it might not have been in the past. I'm well aware that I could go out at any time, and I don't want to do that. And so when I miss a meeting, I have to question what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm much more, I guess, paranoid, but in a good way, about my AA commitments and missing them or not following through. And, I do service work, which is something that I really wasn't all that into before. So that's different. The importance of service work is really, I live in a region where the importance of service work is definitely stressed in most groups, not all groups, but most groups. So I would say those are a couple of the key differences.
And what does service mean to you? Like, what, if you don't mind sharing? So, because you do some good, really good things, and so can you share some of those for maybe somebody who's not as familiar with service work and recovery?
Well, for instance, I volunteer every other Wednesday for 3 hours at Intergroup. And Intergroup is a kind of, how to explain it? Intergroup is a kind of, it's a place where you can go to buy books, to buy chips, to get pamphlets. It's a kind of clearinghouse at a city level or at a district level. So I do that. There's going to be, I volunteer on another committee that's hosting a big recovery event in January in Knoxville. And I'm the secretary for that. And anytime that I have the opportunity to chair a meeting, I take it. So that's the kind of service I do right now. I would like to have a sponsee, but no, I haven't been blessed with one yet.
And we're putting it out there in the universe because Klaus would make a great sponsor for somebody. So we're putting it out there, Klaus.
Well, thank you, Joe.
So what are some of the best things that have happened to you in recovery?
Well, I would say making amends to my father was a big one. He's dead, but I wrote him a letter and read it to my sponsor. And the reason that that's such a positive is that my attitude about him is completely different than it used to be. And the same has happened with my mother as well. So that's a big positive thing that's happened. My attitude about them, well, my attitude about my mother still needs some improvement, but another thing, I have my own place now. I didn't when I first got sober. That's a very big deal to me. Having a quiet environment where I can just be and watch adult animation is, really important to me. And I got a car. I didn't have a car when I was first sober, which made getting to meetings really, really difficult. I had a lot of people pick me up and take me to meetings, for which I will always be grateful. And now I have a car and I can get to meetings on my own. And so that's been a real blessing. It's not the most reliable car and I worry about it all the time, but hey, it's a car.
So what do you do on those tough days that when you don't want to do anything for your recovery? How do you handle those days?
Well, no matter whether it's a tough day or not, I start the day with a couple of prayers out of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And I meditate for 10 minutes. And that tends to put me in a better frame of mind. But I also try to think about what I have to be grateful for, which is a lot. Gratitude can really get me out of my head sometimes. But I also, I pray to God a lot to divorce my thinking from things like worry, remorse, morbid reflection, resentment, fear, self-pity. I pray a lot for God to remove my thinking from all of that. And I try to contact somebody in the program. Now, I'm not always very good at that because that phone can weigh 10,000 pounds. I swear. But I try to reach out to people in the program and see how their day is going. And that's about it.
Well, and you mentioned praying, and how has your spirituality changed in recovery? Is that okay to ask?
Yeah. Well, I would say that I came in thinking of God as this kind of bush league pinch hitter, somebody to pray to when I was in trouble. And now I try to think of God as someone to serve. Not that I'm all that good at doing it, because I'm not. I mean, I am a pretty selfish and self-centered person, but I try to think of God as someone to be served and as a force to be served. But also, the nature of my God has changed as I've been sober. I came in with a very punishing God, a very transactional God, a very you do A, B, C, and then D, E, F will follow kind of God. And I tried to get away from that toward a more loving God who loves me no matter what and who is going to take care of me no matter what, because that's my experience.
No, I love the way you put that, because I think we have that in common. I came in with the very punishing God, grew up kind of in that environment where God is going to punish you, so to speak. Um, and that's kind of one of the things that we learn. And, um, you know, it's as, in a 12-step program, it's God as we understand God, which means it's how what do I want my God to be for me? And I love how the characteristics you named, that's, I think that's pretty powerful, you
And
know.
it's an ongoing story. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I tend to spend my time very selfishly. I don't spend as much of my time in service as maybe other people do. Um, but I do it. I do service. Um, and so I've also I've tried to think of God as a force to be served, not one to be manipulated and controlled through being a good boy. You know what I mean? Um, that because that doesn't really work for me either. Um, I start to get resentful toward God, and I can't have that going on. Um, and sometimes, sometimes I have to take a step back and um, really think to myself, okay. And like sometimes in meetings, I have to take a step back to myself, back and say to myself, okay, but what is God to me? Because I'm getting everybody else's interpretation of God, and it's it's God as I understand God, and I don't understand God. I feel like an idiot whenever I talk about God because there's no. The more you try to understand God, the more elusive God is. Um, so I don't know. Maybe I should leave it there.
Well, I think you you share what you shared is pretty it's really powerful, I think, and it's um so what are some of your favorite recovery tools that you use most often?
Well, I suppose one of them is prayer. Um, I'm always saying little prayers. And so I think that's up there. Another one is reaching out and contacting other alcoholics when I can do that. Because, I tend to have this defect of character where I think that nothing that I have to say is that important and that I'm disturbing people in their day. And, none of that's true. It's all BS. But reaching out and contacting other people in AA is certainly one of my favorite tools. But yeah, I guess mainly prayer.
And that's a good one. One of my favorite sayings is, prayer may not change the situation, but it always changes me, you know.
Right.
And So I think I was brought up too, Klaus. You just made me think of this, but where you had to pray a certain way. My hands had to be in a certain position. I had to be on my knees, and those things are good. Don't get me wrong. That's a good way to pray. But I realize I can pray anytime, any moment, in any position. I don't have to. And it seems silly to not know that. You know what I mean? Like, it seems silly that I didn't know that before I got into recovery. But I didn't. I really
Well, it's
didn't.
all what you're told. So I wouldn't say it sounds silly. It's all what you're taught. You just didn't know any better, is all. And I mean, the other thing is that I try to keep I try to say prayers that are more prayers of thanksgiving than petitionary prayers. I have COPD. Every time I take a really deep breath that fills my lungs, I thank God for it. I thank God before I eat food. I try to find reasons to thank God throughout the day.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So what would you say to somebody who maybe is listening today and is feeling hopeless?
Well, I suppose the first thing I would say is there is hope. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Recovery is not easy, but it's worth it. And if I can recover to the extent that I have, then anybody can. So there's always reason for hope. And I guess another thing that I would say is you can keep doing what you're doing and end up feeling just as hopeless as you feel now, or you can try something different, in which case there's always hope.
I like the try something different. I think that is. I think we have to get to a point of where we're willing to try something different.
Right.
I think the book calls it being beaten into a state of reasonableness.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I had to be. So, yeah, I think that's exactly right.
You one of the things I know you talked about making amends to your mom and your dad, and you said you still had work with your mom. What gives you the willingness to, or the knowledge or the understanding that I still want to work on that, or I still need to work on that? I don't know if that question makes sense.
It does make sense. It does make sense. And what gives me the willingness to do that is the healing that I've already experienced over it. When I wrote my 4-step inventory, I saw some things that I was responsible for in that relationship that I wasn't so proud of, and some things that I needed to make amends for. Now, granted, what I had to make amends for wasn't nearly, it wasn't tit for tat. Let's just put it like that. There were a lot more amends owed me than I owed, but I don't focus on that anymore. The thing that inspires me to work more on that is the healing that I've already experienced.
And that is that makes a lot of sense. Once you experience some of the good, it's kind of like we want more of the good,
Right.
if we take some of the actions. And I don't know, what does surrender mean to you?
Surrender is that place that I go to when I have been beaten into a state of reasonableness, usually by my own selfishness and self-centeredness. Surrender means to me surrender. It means stop relying on myself. Stop relying on myself to be the center of the universe and to solve everything and to run everything and to do everything, because I can't. It's a lot better when you've surrendered to God, because then you're not in the driver's seat. Which is not to say that you become this passive non-entity. You still have to do things, but surrender to God takes the pressure off. I hope that answers the question.
I like that. Surrender takes the pressure off. That's I think that's absolutely right. We take the action and we don't worry about the results anymore.
Right.
Well, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't talked about?
Not really.
Okay.
It's been generally speaking, a pretty overarching conversation.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story, and I think your experience is very relatable, Klaus, to a lot of people, and I appreciate you sharing it.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Well, I can't let you go, buddy, without doing our rapid fire questions.
Okay.
And I just learned I'm going to try something new here, folks. We're going to do a drum roll, and then I'm going to get into the rapid fire questions, Klaus. So here's the drum roll. All right. What is your favorite recovery slogan?
Think, think, think.
What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
Think, think, think.
What do you think is your sobriety superpower?
Patience.
If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
Oh, that's hard. Stop. God loves you.
What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
Philadelphia Freedom by Elton John.
Nice. If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
To help with my recovery? To get another car that's more reliable so I could do more service work and go to more meetings.
What step do you love the most?
Probably the first step.
What step do you love the least?
The 9th step.
What is one of your favorite movies?
Oh, wow. The original Airport with Dean Martin and Jacqueline Suzanne.
Love it. Love it. And finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
About time you got here.
Well, it's the Klaus thing. Thank you so much, man, for coming on the show and for sharing your experience, strength, and hope.
Thank you.
And for the rest of you out there, please subscribe to our friends at thedailyponderables.com, your recovery source for inspiration and encouragement every day. A new episode of The Cup of Joe Show is released every Thursday at noon. Visit thecupofjoeshow.net, or you can listen to the show in your favorite podcast apps, Podbean, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the "the." Please like, follow, subscribe, and share because someone out there needs to hear this today. Have a good day, everybody.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's Experience, Strength, and Hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to The Cup of Joe Show.